But, that word home for me means so much to me because I never really had a home growing up, like prison was my home. And they closed the door behind me and I just walked into a yard full of like murderers, thugs, criminals, and it was ruthless. My crimes got bigger and bigger and bigger and got a reputation for being a good burglar, and that caught up with me again. Multiple properties getting raided for me, headlines in the newspapers, and the next minute I'm on the run because I knew this time I'm fucked now. Armed defenders blew off my door in my apartment and just zip tied me up and put me in prison. And I said to the parole board, I said, you know what? I'm not ready to be released. You can't release me. I would have been in prison for the rest of my life with the way I was going, or dead. After all my years in jail, I just couldn't believe I was back there after everything, I was given the opportunity to engage in the alcohol and other drug treatment course.
My name is Nicole Young, and this is the Rock Your Bottom podcast.
Hi guys, just a quick PSA. I just wanted to jump on and say a massive thank you so far for all of the love and the support. Please, if you are enjoying the content, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. Yes, I'm talking to you. To keep this going, it needs your support. If the love keeps coming, I promise to keep bringing some incredible stories to your screens. I hope you enjoy this next episode. James, welcome to the Rock Your Bottom podcast, my friend. Thank you so much for coming and sitting down with me this morning to share a little bit of your story from active addiction into recovery. How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling good. Thank you for having me.
Nah, you're welcome, man. Your story is incredible. You've gone from one extreme to the next. You've spent more than 10 years of your life behind bars, and now you're sitting in front of me clean and sober and a specialized peer support worker.
Yeah, working in the alcohol and other drug treatment courts.
Amazing. Yeah. And also studying for your applied counselling diploma in addictions and with an organisation called Te Taki.
Yep, my level 7 doing addiction counselling, so it's on my first year. So
wicked.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the man that is sitting in front of me today, and where do you come from?
So where do I come from? I grew up in West Auckland, Kelston. I lived at home with, I had my mum, my dad, my 2 sisters and my stepsister. I was the youngest of us, and, my upbringing was, my parents were very severe alcoholics. I remember my earliest memory of childhood, walking home from primary school, and I could always hear the music before I got home. And back in those days, the kids were seen and not heard. So basically given a Georgie pie and a Coke and sent to our rooms while they partied all night. And that was consistent throughout my upbringing and my childhood. And I think it shaped me in a way that I didn't realize until it was too late,
Yeah.
My 2 sisters were older than me, and by the time they had enough, they moved to the UK, and they kind of left me in that environment by myself. And I was still really young, and I just grew up a really resentful little kid and didn't get taught any values or learn how to set goals or do good at school, hang around the other naughty kids, and never really got anything out of schooling or anything. I was just always so resentful and angry and hurt. And so that was sort of like my upbringing, and I left that environment as soon as I could, and reached out to my stepsister, my dad's daughter, and she was involved in the methamphetamine trade, and that's kind of how it started for me. And
how old were you when that happened?
About 15 or 16 when I went towards her and started smoking the meth. Yeah.
Tell me about your experience with addiction. You just stated that it started around 15, 16. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Because I had a little bit of access to methamphetamine from my stepsister. It was widely available.
Yeah.
And I always had the mentality growing up and watching my dad verbally and physically assault my mum and drink and lose absolutely everything. I never wanted to be an alcoholic, so I hated alcohol. But I tried everything so hard not to be like my father with alcohol, but I ended up being exactly like him with methamphetamine, and broken relationships and so my parents actually reached out to my sisters who were living in the UK a few years later, and they're saying, James has gone down the wrong path. He's doing drugs, and he's disconnected from us. And because I don't want to reach out to them, they're still angry and they're still drinking. And so my sister on my 19th when I was 19, my sisters reached out to me and they said, we'll pay for your trip to come over to the UK, spend some time with us, and it's been a couple of years. We haven't seen you. We're worried about you. And that was really good. I went over to the UK, and even when at the airport, I was getting fried in the bathroom, at the airport on the way to the UK before I left Auckland, and got to the UK, spent some time with my sisters. And it was good. I reconnected with them and flew to Spain after that and had my 20th birthday in Barcelona, Spain with my sisters. It was really amazing. And my plan was to come back to New Zealand, probably get a job, save up some money. I said to myself, I've had this time to get clean and I've seen another side of the world, and I'd love to come back to New Zealand, get some money and go back and create a life over there. But unfortunately, I came back to New Zealand and just I didn't know how to live really. I didn't knew enough. I didn't have any life skills, and my stepsister had been arrested by this time for her methamphetamine dealing, and so I went into petty crime to pay for my meth habit. And again, my parents would try and reach out to me, but I was just disconnected from them and always spitting venom at them, especially my old man. I always just hated him, for the way that he used to treat us kids and my mum and so on. And so what happened is I started doing like burglaries and thefts and car thefts, and eventually that caught up with me. And I was put in prison for the first time in my life. I was put in the old Mount Eden, the old rock.
What was that experience like for you?
I remember that experience vividly. I remember the judge saying to me, we have to get you off the street. And it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I got put down in the cells, sent to jail on remand, and I was back in the chub wagon, handcuffed, and I was thinking, shit, what am I walking into, And they put me in yard 1, and it was just, they opened the yard door and they just pushed me in. By this time I was a little white kid, and I was 20, but I felt like, I looked like I was 16 because I was so cooked. And they closed the door behind me, and I just walked into a yard full of like murderers, thugs, criminals, and man, it was like it was ruthless. And because I knew absolutely no one in prison, and I was stood over, beaten up, picked on. It was a real bad experience, and I think I ended up getting sentenced to 18 months in prison for a couple of burglaries that I committed. And that 18 months, I hated it, It wasn't a life that I was accustomed to. And even while I was in custody, my mum and dad would try and reach out to me, but I'd only ring them if I wanted something, put money in my P119, put money in my account, or even if my dad answered the phone throughout all my years of jail, I'll just ring up to check on mum, hey son, how are you? And I said, put mum on. Yeah, I'm all good, put mum on, And say, hey mum, you all good? And, yeah, all good. Okay, can I have some money? No. It's either yes or no. Okay, bye, and just angry, And through that 18 months, I started meeting people who were around my age, and I was attracted to their glorifying of their war stories, of all their crime and drugs and women. And I thought, fuck, this sounds interesting. And I got released from prison after 18 months and started connecting with those people that I met in jail. And because I still had no life skills, I didn't even know that I had a problem with methamphetamine. What I got taught growing up was, you drink if you have a good time, you drink if you're angry. It's just normal. But that was my position with methamphetamine, I was just getting high and having a good time. And I started, because I relapsed after I got out of that 18 months, I started getting back into big crimes, bigger burglaries. And I just repeated that pattern. So I had my 20th birthday in Spain and celebrated my 21st birthday in Mount Eden prison, the Rock, And yeah, it was sucked. Yeah, and I just continued that pattern and relapsed, reoffended, and then I got sentenced to 2.5 years in jail. On that 2.5 years in jail, I'd started connecting with this antisocial network of people that I met on my previous sentence, and I was no longer getting picked on. I knew people, and It was just felt like high school prison back then, you know. It was like a university for the criminally insane, you know. And the only time that I ever wanted to be out of jail was when I'd see some severe violence, you know. I witnessed a lot of violence in prison over my 10 years inside, and but you know, it still wasn't enough to scare me, you know. And I soon realized that you could do all these drug treatment courses and these STIRP courses, and while you're in prison, and it gives you credit towards the parole board. So by this time, I felt like I was a master manipulator, you know. I was just manipulating my way through all these courses, never learning anything. Didn't even know I was an addict. Got parole after 2.5 years. Same thing happened. Relapse, reoffended, and ended up with my crimes got bigger and bigger and bigger. And by this time, I was with a whole antisocial group. We were robbing safes, robbing money exchanges. I was into burglaring safes. That was my thing by this time. And
how did that become your thing? Like, how did you get into burglaring safes?
I think it was the people that I met in jail, those first 2 legs. They were the ones telling me, bro, we robbed this, we robbed that, we pulled a safe out, we cut it open, we get this. And I was thinking, then all the women and the lifestyle, wearing the Gucci, the Louis Vuitton. I was thinking, you know, the stolen cars, the motel rooms. I was thinking, fuck, I want to be part of that, you know? Yeah. Because I never really had any connection with my own family growing up. And then these guys that I met in prison became like my real tight mates, you know? It's like my using didn't stop just because I was in custody as well, you know, like a lot of methamphetamine and drugs inside jail, and I just used to stay up and get high in prison and do my own heading all night, you know. And so my crimes escalated. I got a reputation for being a good burglar, and you know, that caught up with me again. I ended up doing 4.5 years this time for more burglaries, and so I got chucked back into that same environment, you know. And I thought by this time it was just normal, you know. You go to jail, you get out, you get high, you just do your thing and go on the run if the cops are looking for you. You know, multiple properties getting raided for me, headlines in the newspapers, and you know, and again, like I still didn't know I was an addict. I just thought this was normal. I was accustomed to the criminal lifestyle. In that 4.5 years too, you know. Did the courses, manipulated my way into a good unit, but it was all a front, you know. I just knew how to put on that mask, and my core beliefs were like lie, deny, protect. And after before that 4.5 years, my 2 sisters moved back from London, and with them they brought, they got married, they had kids. So I now had nephews, and there was one visit, my sisters came in and seen me and introduced me to my nephews. And I was like, wow, you know, like, fuck, I'm an uncle. And then I seen my mum and dad come in with them as well. And what I witnessed from afar was now my mum and I witnessed my parents, they're drinking it slowly. The more jail I did, their drinking decreased, you know
really?
What I mean? Yeah. So it was kind of weird. And I witnessed my parents being grandparents to their grandkids. And I was witnessing my family on the outside actually being a normal family for once. And I was thinking, fuck, that's what I want to be a part of, you know. And I was coming up for parole in that 4.5 year lag, and my sister said to me, you know, every time you get out of jail, you just go back to those idiots, and you know, you do drugs and crime, and you're not getting any younger now, you know. So I ended up getting Home D after that. Not Home D. Home D after that 4.5 years into my sister's care. I think it was like 6 months Home D, and you know, it was good. I was connecting with my family, but there was still that resentment towards my mum and dad, and we never really healed that. And but I think it was the last week of my 6 months of my Home D, one of my old mates, my old associates, got out of prison, and he came around and seen me. And the day I got off that Home D sentence, my bracelet came off. I just went with my mates and got back on the meth, started doing crime. The next minute I'm on the run. Because I was on the run, I was just doing everything I can to get as much money as I can before I went back to jail, because I knew this time, I'm fucked now. I'm going to get a big leg, you know. And cut my family off again, didn't want to know them. But what happened also is, in that scene, I met a woman, and she ended up getting pregnant she told me, I'm going to have your son. And that was the first time in my life I thought, fuck, man. I don't want my son growing up like me, being resentful towards my dad. I don't want him being resentful at me, so I need to sort my shit out, So I told her too, I said, fuck, we can't keep living like this. I want to be a dad, this is going to change my life. And it was the first time I really thought about what the fuck am I going to do with my life? So she was an addict as well. And I said to her, we really need to get away from the people that we're surrounded by.
Yeah.
So we did that for a little bit. But I think in hindsight, I just wanted to disconnect from that life and try to stop using, because I didn't want her to use meth while she was pregnant with my son. And again, things were going really well. And the day my son was born, or maybe even a couple of weeks before he was born, I was doing meth behind her back and reconnecting with my old antisocial mates. And I could feel things getting, I could feel like I was losing control of my life again. And but by the time my son was born, I thought that he would be a big enough reason for me to stop using meth. But my addiction to meth took over, and I loved more meth than my son. I look at it now, it was more powerful than the love of my son. And I went straight back into full relapse. And my friend got murdered around about that time.
Wow.
And because she's a meth deal gone wrong, and the police, and I'd actually seen her around home a week prior. And then the police come around home, and by this time I'm back doing crime, and the police come around home. They say, we're looking for so-and-so, any information? And anyway, it was a real bad situation, because I was, how do I say it? Because I was one of the last people to see her. They kind of had a thought, what do you, tell us what's going on? And I said, fuck, I don't know. And I started getting stressed out, using more drugs. And then an old associate rang me from inside jail off one of his old smuggled phones. He goes, hey, bro, heard you having a bit of trouble out there? And I said, yeah, bro, I might have to get some lawyers' money for a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he goes, bro, and then he said to me over the phone, he goes, bro, I've got an Asian antique dealer who's going to be walking out of a house with $200K in about a week's time, and I just need you to stick her up and take the money. Well, when he said antique dealer, it's like code for drug dealer, And I said to him back, bro, I've got a gun. I'm ready to go. Let me at her. Give me the address and I'll stick her up and take the money. And then that next morning, the defenders rang my phone about 4:30 in the morning. And they said, we've got the house surrounded. Come out. You're under arrest. And I went out and got on my knees, and I still didn't know what I was getting arrested for. And they handcuffed me and they said, I will charge you with organized crime and conspiracy to ag rob. Your mate's cell phone was bugged and we listened to everything.
Oh my God.
And I was like, fuck. And then I was stressing out about that, stressing about this other homicide detective stuff. And then he leaned down and said to me, by the way, we figured out who murdered so-and-so. And they obviously knew I had absolutely nothing to do with it. But because that was cleared up, I was now under arrest for conspiracy to ag rob and organized crime, and I ended up back in prison, and I just couldn't believe it. And I was like, I knew that I was going to do a stint, and then this other big burglary that I did while I was on the run came back to bite me, and I got only got 6 months home D for this conspiracy to ag rob and organized crime, but I got 4 years, 8 months for the burglary with a non-parole sentence of 50%. So I had to serve 50% of my time in high security before I'd be even considered for parole, and that sentence destroyed me, because it just broke my heart knowing that I put my son, he'd lost his dad, And by this time, I was in his mum, with me and him had a massive falling out. She, the money that I got from the safe that got me 4 years, 8 months, I actually gave her the money. And so she ended up getting 2 years for receiving the money from the safe. And so now my son was left in the care of her mum and God knows who. And so he's left with nobody, we're both in jail. And it was on that sentence I said to myself, I fucking need to sort my shit out,
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe I let him down that badly, Now he's out in the world all by himself, And this time in jail was different too, because I knew that I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
It destroyed me, knowing what he'd be going through. And I had to serve nearly the whole 4 years, 8 months. I think I served 4 years, 6 months on that one, And by this time, my son's mother got a protection order out on me, dragged me through the family court. I didn't see my son for years, for 3.5, 4 years. And only once when my parents brought him in. And I knew that I went to the parole board. This is an interesting thing. After 4 years, 4 months. And they said, I did the exact same thing I've done the whole time. Did the drug treatment units, try to manipulate my way out. But then I went to the parole board and they said, basically, you've done enough for us to give you a release date. And that took me back, and I thought about my son, and I said to the parole board, I said, you know what? I'm not ready to be released. You can't release me. I said, if you release me without me going into residential treatment, I've just spent the last 10 years of my life in this place. You know what I mean? If you release me now, I'll relapse and re-offend, and I'll spend another 10 years of my life in jail. I know that for a fact because of my history, And I now knew that something was wrong, that it's not normal to continue to smoke meth and do drugs and go to jail and get out and go to jail. And I was really thinking about my son. I wanted to be the best version for him, and getting out with any support, I knew that I would have relapsed. So they said, it's really rare that we hear someone do that. So they stood me down for another couple of months so I could reach out to High Ground Rehab. And luckily enough, High Ground Rehab came back with a bed date for me. And I got released from Perumirumu prison, Unit 6. I smile because it was a good, even though it sounds bad, like it was a good time in jail, Unit 6 Perry was actually a good time back then, even though I hated it, but like I enjoyed myself. I was playing league, and we played New Zealand criminals versus New Zealand police on the league field, but the day I got released from that, after 4 years, 6 months, I think, my son was waiting for me at the gate, with my mum.
Wow.
And that was a powerful moment for me. And so I went into High Ground Rehab and did 4.5 months there. And man, it was the most hardest. That 4.5 months in treatment was harder than the 10 years of jail I did, because I had to face my demons. I went in there with the core beliefs of lie, deny, protect. I was labeled as an antisocial. The whole time there I got 15 warnings, 2 final warnings, high buy of all women, phone ban.
I can just imagine. I've been in there as well. I can just.
Yeah, it was ruthless. And because I didn't know any better, I've been a criminal for the last how many years in jail, and I brought that mentality into treatment. And they were just like, nah, buddy, this isn't the real, this is not how you do it,
Yeah.
And
before you move on, I just want to ask you a question. If you were to name a specific time within everything you were just talking about, what do you think your rock bottom moment would have been for you to realize, oh my God, it is time to change?
My rock bottom was when the armed offenders arrested me at my home when my son was upstairs and asleep in his cot. Sleep in his cot, and I got taken away in handcuffs at like 4:30 in the morning, and just knowing how much I'd let him down,
Yeah.
I tried being not like my father, but I ended up exactly like him, but with methamphetamine. And I remember sitting in the cell just thinking, just broken, just couldn't believe it. I was just in tears, and I was like, fuck, I let my son down. How did I let it get this bad, Yeah, that was my rock bottom.
And was that the time where the police had your house like surrounded?
Yeah.
Was that,
Yeah.
Shit.
I think it was only like 6 months old then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were arrested and, taken into the cells, obviously rock bottom moments, there is a bit of a turning point there. Did you continue using and stuff in jail after? I
think I used once or twice after that in prison, But my years leading up to that, especially in the early days in the Rock and ACRP, man, meth was just rampant everywhere in there,
Yeah.
People were using needles, smoking meth. The guards were bringing in drugs, cell phones. It was just crazy. Even if you want to get clean in jail, it was just right in your face,
Yeah. And I guess your turning point as well, before you got released into High Ground, you knew that you needed more assistance with, help and, getting clean and stuff. Like you just saying that, you reached out and said, you cannot release me. I need help. That's massive. That process into Higher Ground. Take it away, how did that all go?
In the Higher Ground?
Yeah.
Man, like it was ruthless. I think, because I manipulated my way through the system, I tried to manipulate my way in Higher Ground, even though I know that I needed to change my life. My mindset was still stuck in the antisocial mindset, and like I was so much underground behavior in there, and I look back at it now. I don't even know how they graduated me. I would have sent me back to custody.
Yeah.
But I got through that, and in that process, it was actually really powerful. It was the first time in my life that they got my parents and my sisters in, and we had a family counseling session, and I told them how their drinking and violence affected me growing up, but then also so they understood. I now understood. What am I trying to say? So they understood what I went through growing up. But then there was also the opportunity to tell me what they were going through at around about that time too. So we kind of bonded over that. And through that, through those counseling sessions, I kind of like dropped that resentment towards my dad and reconnected with him, which I was lucky enough because not long after I graduated, my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And, the last year of his life, he was just bedridden. Cancer was just eating him away. But I was grateful that I could be there to support my mum. I was clean, I was focused, and be there. My dad could see me clean, you know what I mean? Yeah. And he passed away peacefully in his sleep, and that was the best thing that ever happened to him because fucking cancers are ruthless, and don't wish that upon anyone. After treatment, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I was grateful that I disconnected from my old antisocial friends, and so I actually was in the rooms of NA. I got introduced to the rooms of NA through Higher Ground and treatment, and I started thinking to myself, what am I going to do with my life? I've got no education, no life skills. I don't know anything. All I've got is my past, and how can I use that to benefit myself? And I actually seen one of my mates. He was working at a private rehab, and I reached out to him. I said, bro, what do you do? And he told me, I do this and that. I support others. I use my lived experience. I said, and then something just clicked to me and said, fuck, that's what I want to do. That sounds really cool. So after treatment, I went to Unitech and got my level 4 in mental health and addiction, and ended up working at that same rehab for like 2 years, and things were going really well. Reconnected with my son, that he came back into my life. So I graduated uni, reconnected with my son. Life was going good, living independently, working. Life was good, I was training. I had a few ring fights in the ring, and things were going really good. And met another woman who I'm still with today, and things were going too good. And what happened is one night it was offered, when we have a night of this and that, and I thought to myself, oh fuck, that sounds pretty good, and one thing led to another, and I had a puff, and that one puff just saw me straight back into active relapse, just sent me straight back there. And yeah, actually before that, I remember I met a girl. Sorry, I'll go back a bit. It started before that with alcohol. My relapse was on alcohol of all things. I just finished working a night shift, and I met this girl, and I met her in Ponsonby, and she goes, come out for a drink. I said to her, oh yeah, cool, I don't drink, but I'll come out anyway. And I went to the bar, and the music was playing really loud, and I said to the bartender, bro, give me two wines or whatever it was. Give me 2 wines for the woman, the girls, and give me a sparkling water. Yeah. And he couldn't hear me, and he goes, what? I said, bro, give me 2 wines for the woman and give me a sparkling water. And then again, he goes, what? I can't hear you. And in that 5 seconds or 2 second pause, I said to myself, fuck, I've been like a year and a half clean. My dad's an alcoholic. I've never been an alcoholic. Bro, fuck it. Give me 2 wines and a Corona. Bro, that kicked my relapse off. You know what I mean? That split decision kicked my relapse off. And then it was a week later, the girl I'm with now, she said, why don't we have a night of like sex and drugs? You know what I mean? And that was my thing in active, Yeah. And I thought, fuck it, yeah, clean, I can handle it one night. Well, that one night turned into a year and a bit long relapse, you know what I mean? Fucking destroyed me. Within that year, lost my job. I was back hanging out with the same antisocial people that I was kicking with. I was armed again. Every time I was out in the community, I was always armed with handguns or whatever. And I was armed. I was robbing people. I was sticking up drug dealers. I was robbing my friends, abusing my partner. And it got really bad. This relapse that I had was one of the worst relapses of my life. It was like the analogy I use is like I use a wave. I'm standing my back towards the tsunami wave, and it's just I'm in so deep that it just engulfs me, and I can't get out.
Yeah.
And by the time it came to an end, once again, I was in my apartment in the city, armed. Armed defenders blew off my door to my apartment and just zip tied me up and put me in prison. And again, I lost my son, lost my home, my partner left me. I'm sitting in prison, and this time, because I had a little bit of recovery under me, I knew that this is not the life I wanted. But all of it, and then also it was a bit of a sense of relief as well, because I knew that this was I couldn't stop using. Like when I talk to people and they say, I said, what got you into recovery? And they said, bro, one day I just thought I'd had enough and I couldn't do it anymore. So I put myself into treatment. I just said to myself, how the fuck do you do that? I can't do that. I can only ever stop using meth if I'm arrested. I've never been able to say, oh, fuck, I need to have a sleep.
Yeah.
I got to sleep when I passed out in the car at a red light or something, what I mean? But, so when I got arrested on that by the armed defenders again, I was arrested for possession of a handgun, possession of methamphetamine, aggravated robbery, ×2, threatening with demand with menace, and some forgery and some documents. That's how deep I got into it. And there was that day I got arrested was August the 8th, 2021. And I sat in prison and I was just broken. I couldn't believe it, I was like, fuck. But also a sense of relief that finally it's over. I've been arrested, because if I didn't get arrested on that day, that was my higher power saving me from myself, I would have been in prison for the rest of my life for the way I was going, or dead because I couldn't stop using. And the things that I was doing were just pretty violent, And what happened is I was sitting in prison, and after all my years in jail, I just couldn't believe I was back there after everything, And I was given the opportunity to engage in the alcohol and other drug treatment court. My lawyer came and see me and he goes, fuck, James, we're back here again. What the fuck's it going to take for you to sort your shit out? And he said, why don't you try the drug court? In all honesty, I've heard about the drug court, but that was the last road I ever wanted to go down because I knew that it was the hardest road of all.
Yeah.
But, that was my only option. It was either that or do another 4 to 8 years, you know what I mean? And I said to myself, fuck, I've already done 10 years. If I do another 10, I'll just probably just end my life, I couldn't go through that again. And so luckily enough, like in my drug court determination hearing, because, the judges, the police and the team, they sit around without you present and they talk about, is this guy a good fit for the court? And my lawyer came and said to me, he goes, bro, everyone's saying you're not a good fit for the court. First of all, you got aggravated robbery charges, you got gun charges. They don't take that in the drug court, it's looking like you're not going to get in. So I'm thinking, fuck, I'm just going to have to do the time, And then I got, luckily enough, it was everyone declined my application into the court, but it was Judge Sharp that saved me. He said, my lawyer came down and said, everyone declined you, but Judge Sharp has seen your journey and he reckons that you're more than capable of doing this. And so without Judge Sharp, I'll probably still be sitting in jail today, And so I was accepted into the drug court, and I knew that was the opportunity to really sort my shit out. And I think I was in custody for 5 months then, and with the drug court, they released me to Epsom Lodge and to do post-treatment. And by the time I hit Epsom Lodge, I had nothing. I had nothing to lose. I didn't even have ID. The police shut down my bank accounts. I had no real friends. And at Epsom Lodge, I started re-engaging in the rooms of recovery of NA. And I remember walking into an NA meeting after so many years away, and I seen my sponsor there, and he goes, bro, I've been waiting for you to come back home, come back and see me. And so I started engaging in the NA meetings, and what the drug court did, they put me back into higher ground, but and
oh my God.
yeah, after everything I've gone through. But you know what? This time in higher ground, I was more mature.
Yeah.
I knew I was more goal focused. I knew what I wanted, and I'd grown up a lot, And this time in higher ground, I really made the most out of it. and got my partner in for one-on-one counseling sessions because what I put her through in my last use and active was I destroyed her, and I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. She went through her own shit, and also trying to take on my trauma when I was in psychosis. Because when I was a kid living with my parents, one of my mum's friends sexually abused me when I was only like 11 or 12, and that really fucked me up mentally. And when I was in psychosis with my partner, I wouldn't see my partner, I'd see my abuser, and I'd take all my trauma out on her. And she went through a lot, and I'm lucky she's still with me, but me and her got one-on-one counseling through that, and I really worked on that deep-seated issue trauma. I should have worked on that trauma when I went to higher ground first of all, but I went back into there and really worked on that, and what triggers me into relapse. And that time in high ground, it was a good experience, and I'm grateful I went back a second time because it saved my life, and then my journey through the court, I think I was in the court for like 20 months, and the counseling, man alive, relationship counseling, higher ground, the 90-day program. I just went through so many programs, and I graduated the court, and by the time I graduated the court, my partner now was pregnant with our daughter, so now I've got my son and my daughter. And no, my daughter was born like 2 months before I graduated the court, and so she was at graduation, and I've just been onwards and upwards since then. I haven't looked back. I'm now 3 years, 9 months, 19 days free from all alcohol and drugs, and
congratulations. Yeah, that's massive.
Yeah, life's winning now, and I now work in the alcohol and other drug treatment court as a peer support, working alongside others that are going through what I went through. From the antisocial life that I came from, I'm now sitting in a courtroom working alongside the judges, the police prosecution, the lawyers, the treatment team, the other peer supports. And my voice is very valued in that space because I give a lived experience lens, and it's always a surreal moment. I will go down into the court cells and interview determinations coming into the court, and I talk to them and say to them, and they say to me, "Bro, what do you know?" And I look at them, I go, "Bro, fuck, I did 10 years in jail. I was sitting where you're sitting not that long ago. Fuck, if I can do it, you can do it too," and that inspires them to say, "Fuck, if this guy can do it, look at him." And so I now really do use my lived experience to help others, and life couldn't be better now. I've got me and my partner in a good space, got my son and my daughter in my life, working full-time, studying with my bachelor's of addiction counseling. Life's good. Life's amazing.
That's pretty incredible. What do you think is the biggest thing that you've learned throughout your recovery that you believe helps you today?
What have I learned in my recovery?
Yeah.
That it's okay not to be okay. It's what you do with those feelings and those thoughts that will determine your outcome. You're like, event plus response equals outcome. That was a big one for me. I can go for an event, but how I respond to that event will determine my outcome. And now I respond to things in my wise mind and maturity and open eyes. I think before I act these days. My whole mindset and everything in me has changed. I don't listen to the same music. I think what I used to think was cool before, like cutting safes open, hanging out with gang members, hanging out with hookers and prostitutes and robbing people. Today, I look at that and I think that's disgusting, it's not my lifestyle, and I've got a complete different mindset to who I am today. Today I'm a dad, I'm a family man, I'm a partner. I love who I am today, a complete opposite to what I was. Yeah,
that's so special. If you were able to have a conversation with, I guess, the teenage James, and he was sitting there and you got the opportunity to say anything to him, what would you say to him?
And I'll just tell him that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to say to him just to go home, but that word home for me means so much to me because I never really had a home growing up. Like prison was my home. But I'd just like to say to him that everything's going to be okay, just stop what you're doing. Just stop it. Go find some better friends, and I'll just tell him everything's going to be okay. Just walk away from that life,
Do you think if your environment was different when you were younger, you know, like if you did have a different group of friends and if your parents weren't drinking the way that they were drinking, that, you know, life would have had a different different outcome than what it has?
I used to always think yes,
Yeah.
most definitely. But now I think, you know, I was a product of my environment, but at the end of the day, I can't put so much blame on them. You know, I have to take accountability and responsibility for what I did and how I chose to respond to how I grew up. Like I said, E plus R equals O, you know, event plus response equals outcome. I responded to my childhood negatively, where my two sisters went through the same childhood and responded completely differently and ended up with families and houses, and you know what I mean? So yeah, it played a part in me and who I am, but end of the day, I got to take responsibility on how I reacted to that situation too. Could there have been more role models in my life? 100%, you know, definitely.
Are there any misconceptions about addiction you believe that, I guess, normies should start to understand? You know, is there anything? Yeah, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, most definitely. I think a lot of people think that addicts are just lost causes or should be put in prison and locked up for the rest of their lives. Like, I completely think that that's a misconception.
Yeah.
Like, I look at addicts as people that are very unwell and that need support and compassion and understanding. Because if I was showing that growing up instead of, put it this way, you know, when I was 20, if I was rehabilitated instead of incarcerated back then, how different my life would have changed. But back then, the mindset of people was like, you know, you're doing these things because you're a very bad person. You know, I was doing those things because I needed drugs, you know, not because I was a bad person. So that's how I'd look at that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Thank you for talking to me a little bit about all of that, James. I just have a question about your recovery, and what do you think the biggest gift you have received in your recovery this far has been?
I think the biggest gift of my recovery is my kids, you know?
Yeah.
I got two really good kids, and my daughter, she's beautiful, and my son, he's smart and cheeky, and my biggest gift of recovery, definitely my kids, you know? And the life that I got today is a gift of recovery.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit how your studies are going, and I guess, you know, stepping into the space of studying, you know, like becoming a practitioner. I bet, you know, 10 years ago, you would never have thought that this was going to be your life today. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I never thought I'd be doing my level 7 addiction counseling, you know, like that was something that wasn't even on my radar. But what inspired me is seeing others like myself go before me and leave footprints for me to follow. And, you know, that really inspired me. And it's challenging. I'm learning a lot. But my mindset, I've got the saying that I say to myself is, you know, there's people out there living the life that you deserve who are way less qualified than you simply because they took action. And, you know, that to me tells me, you know, I need to step up and take action. You know, if I want to get ahead in life and catch up to what I've missed out on, I need to upskill and improve my life. And I love studying. I love learning about addiction and psychology and people's behavior and psychopharmacology and everything, you know. The more I can learn to use my lived experience alongside my education to help someone get out of the rut that I was in, then the better, you know. Yeah,
it's pretty powerful, eh? What do you do today to look after your own recovery? You know, I can tell that you look after a lot of people, and you know, you've got kids and you've got a partner, and your life is busy.
Yeah.
How do you look after yourself within all of that?
So I don't go to too many meetings as I used to when I first came into treatment and recovery, but I'm grateful that when I do need a meeting, I know where to go for one. What I do for my recovery is I try and disconnect from work when I go home. I go to the gym, I have saunas, I go to the beach, and a special place that me and my family go to is whangamata. You know, go for a swim in the ocean and connect and meditate, and that's what keeps me clean. You know, my family, meditation, the gym, saunas, and NA meetings when I need one, you know. Yeah.
Oh, wicked. And I guess, you know, out of all of those, if you were to go home today, wake up tomorrow morning and you felt like shit, what would your first thing you do is to, you know, not feel like shit anymore?
I'd check in with me, do some self-regulation and ask myself, why am I feeling like shit? And then I'll do something to make me feel better. Like I'll give my daughter a hug, I'll go to the gym. And then, the biggest tool and resource that I have is I'll reach out to my other good mates in recovery and say to them, what, I'm actually not doing okay. I need to talk. Through coming into recovery, I don't have many good mates, but I have a good circle of men around me that are honest, loyal, trustworthy, and also hold me accountable when I need to be.
Yeah.
And I can always reach out to them when I'm struggling, and I'm so grateful for that. It's not about quantity but quality. I got good quality men around me. Yeah,
that's pretty epic.
Yeah.
As we start to wrap up this podcast, I really actually like to give the people that come on and do an episode just space at the end to say or talk about anything that they feel like they might have skipped over, or anything that they think I might have asked but I might have forgotten. I want to give that opportunity to you as well, just to say anything really about recovery, and the floor is yours.
Oh, well, first and foremost, thank you for inviting me on. It's been a good process. I'm really grateful for having this space. My message is simple, if you're in active addiction and if you don't know a way out, then just reach out for support. There's so many support networks out there that you can reach out to, For myself, if I knew what I knew now when I was back in active, when I was 20 or 19 or 16 or 17, my life could have been different. So my number one advice is just reach out and go talk to someone about what you're going through. It's okay not to be okay. Just talk about it before. You don't want to spend the rest of your 10 years of your life in custody like I did, So my main message is just reach out, find support, and go to a meeting if you need be. I think meetings are important in early recovery, as many as you can get to, because there's some good people in those rooms and always someone willing to help you if you just talk about what's going on for you.
Other than meetings, and if someone is watching this podcast episode, listening to you going, fuck, where can I reach out for support? Do you have anything off the top of your head that you could name?
Where can you reach out for support? I think there's a lot of stuff online. I was going to say, to come into my space, you'd have to get arrested and go into the drug court. Then I can help out. But man, if you are struggling, reach out to me online. If you can find me on Facebook or anything, I'm always there to have a talk.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. So you're on Facebook just as James Sturch?
Yeah, James Sturch. Yeah.
Oh, look at James. Hey, I just want to say a massive thank you for coming down and sitting down with me this morning. I am truly grateful that you've put your trust in me to be able to have your story here. And dude, this is going to, fingers crossed, reach some people that it needs to reach. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. If I can do it, anyone can, So,
totally.
Yeah, I appreciate this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Reach out and go talk to someone about what you're going through. It's okay not to be okay.